Hi, everybody, and thanks for coming. My name is Nathan Rogers. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing Porter Gale. She's the former VP of Marketing for Virgin America, and her new book, Your Network is Your Net Worth, is all about values-based connections now in the digital world. So without further ado, Ms. Porter Gale.
Right. Okay. Perfect. Thank you so much. It's really great to be at Google today. Do I look familiar to anyone? Because I used to be over here all the time because we did so many partnerships with Google. No? Well, you know me. So I was at Virgin America. We did tons of partnership with you guys. Just to give you a little bit of background on that, we worked with Google Apps and Maps and Wallet and Offers, and so I do feel like I know quite a few people here, and it was great. I was at the airline for 4 years, and ultimately I decided to leave. I didn't want to be an airline person forever. I started to get very passionate about technology, and I had one of those aha moments. I'm not sure if you guys have had these, but I was sitting one day and I just was thinking, wow, my life has gotten so full and so rich. Have you had that feeling where you're like, wow, how did this happen? You've had it, right? Where things feel really good. And I was reflecting and I was trying to think about, well, why is this happening? Like, what's going on? And what happened was, during my time at Virgin, we were pretty scrappy. We didn't have tons of money. And I talked to everybody on airplanes. I was constantly talking to people. So if you didn't have your headphones on, forget it. I would have been, where are you from? Tell me more about yourself. My world started getting bigger and bigger. I kept meeting all these fascinating people. So there was one time I was on the plane and there was a gentleman next to me, and he started saying something about the mood lighting. He's like, the mood lighting is so cool. And I was like, yeah, well, tell me more. You know, I work for the airline. Turns out that he was building a boat made out of recycled bottles, and he was sailing it from San Francisco to Australia, a boat called the Plastiki. You know, just this fascinating story. His name was David de Rothschild. So I said, can I bring my daughter to come see the boat? And he said, yes, of course, no problem. What happens next is that her class starts studying the environment. So there's this ripple effect, right, of one conversation impacting the next. And so I started to become fascinated by the spontaneity of these random conversations. So that started happening. Another spontaneous event happened. I had met Tim Ferriss, who is an author. You guys heard of Tim Ferriss? Yep. You have 4 Hour Workweek? Yep. I think he works more than 4 hours, but it's a great book. So he had invited me to come to one of his events, and he said, why don't you come and talk about social media? And I said, well, I'm kind of getting bored with that topic. I've given that speech about 50 times. Let me do this new presentation about 3 degrees of separation and all about the spontaneous connecting. And that's what I'm passionate about. He said, no problem. So I go to this event up in Napa. I give this presentation about the world getting smaller and smaller. So in the past, it's 6 degrees of separation, right? 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. Is anyone good at that game here? A couple of you? I'm horrible at that game. 6 degrees of separation is now down to 4 degrees of separation, or even 3 if you have common interests. And a lot of that is because of companies like Google and Twitter and Facebook, that our connections have reduced. We've got more global connecting. It's much easier to find people. So I gave this presentation. Lo and behold, lucky for me, there was an agent in the room, and he said, I think there's something really interesting here. You're talking about a completely new way to network and connect. So we started brainstorming on this idea, and we came up with the concept for the book. And what the book is all about is that in the past, a lot of people thought of networking as a very kind of almost negative or a have to kind of methodology. Any of you think of it as kind of schmoozy or negative? One, two, right? Where even for me, when I was in my 20s, I'm not going to tell you how old I am, but I know I'm way older than you two since we talked. But it was really hard for me at first to network and to go to parties and have authentic conversations with people, and I've learned how to do it over the years, right, with all my work experience. So this kind of networking that was uncomfortable, and all of a sudden I'm thinking about when I was in my 20s, it was an uncomfortable feeling, to now, what changed? How come my ability to connect is so much greater? It's obviously age and it's confidence, but it was more than that. So I started looking at networking and thinking about it not as a transaction, where a lot of people think about it as going and giving out your business cards, figuring out how many people are in your contact list, but looking at it more as a transformation and looking at it more towards how can I be the best person that I can be? So in a grand scheme, it's not who you know, it's who you're becoming as a person. And it's what you believe in, and it's what you're sharing with other people, right? So that's kind of one premise of the book, is that it's not who you know, it's who you're becoming as a person. So the whole first section of the book is all about, is there anything that's holding me back, right? It could be something like fear of public speaking. You guys are probably good at that. I bet you do a lot of public speaking at Google. It could be anxiety about being in crowds. It could be anything like that that keeps you back from connecting. So the first section of the book is all about identifying, are there any barriers that are holding me back? Now, I share a lot of stories. There's one story that's not in the book, but I've written a lot about it. There's a gentleman named Chang. He is a very successful coach. He does a lot of content, but he happens to be an introvert. He's very shy, and when he started trying to connect with people, it was very hard for him because he always felt like a phony, right? So I worked with Victor. He was actually at that speech that I told you about with Tim Ferriss. And I said, well, what are the 3 things that you're most passionate about? And start connecting with people based on your passions. So for Victor, technology, entrepreneurship, and family, those are the 3 things that he's most passionate about. And I'll give you kind of a structure of how to do this. And he started over the last 2 years, he started when he would meet people, he would start to connect with them on the topics that he was comfortable with. And lo and behold, it transformed the way that he connected. So giving you a little bit more structure about this idea, in the book I call it the funnel test. Now, I'm not sure if this is true, but I believe that Apple uses 3 core words when they define their brand, and so I talk a lot about this. I don't have it in the book because I don't want the Apple people to come to me and say it's wrong. But the 3 words that I think you'll agree are very synonymous with Apple are innovative, simple, and beautiful, right? Everything that they do comes out of that filter. So after working with brands and companies, and brands like Virgin America over the last 20 years, it's proven that companies that have defined positioning, a defined mission, defined core objectives, like a roadmap, are more successful. So how come as people we don't have our roadmap? We don't have our mission, our objectives. So the funnel test in the book, the first step of it is figure out 3 core passions. And I might put someone on the spot. I won't do somebody who's chewing. Somebody starts taking a bite of their lunch. So 3 passions. Step 2 of the funnel test is tonality. How do you want to be perceived by others? So an example of that, Lady Gaga, bold, eccentric, right? The tonality that I've picked, and I hope that you guys will find this one somewhat symbolic of what I'm trying to do, but so inspirational is the tonality I have. I would like to inspire others, but I also want to be inspired myself, where I'm constantly learning and changing. So step 2 is picking your tonality. You might want to be perceived as intellectual. You might want to be perceived as creative, right? So now we have step 1 is our 3 words. Step 2 is a tonality. Step 3 is defining 15 words or less what your passion or your objective is. Make sense? I see a couple people thinking, any questions on that? No? Anyone want to share what some of their passions are?
Especially, those are 2 of my passions.
Okay, great. So now Nathan, being that he loves sports and kids and volunteering, what happens when you start connecting with people based on those topics?
I think people warm up to you a lot quicker because when you are genuine and talking to them about something you're passionate, especially if they have a shared interest, you really build a quick relationship based on that.
That's exactly right. So he's not a plant. I didn't give him money to come sit here. But when you start connecting with people based on topics that you're really passionate about and that you're knowledgeable about or care about, you're going to have more authentic connections. So that's why one of the reasons that it's very important to kind of figure out these things and connect that way, because in today's world, we're no longer business life and personal life. It overlaps a lot. I mean, we were talking earlier that you come here, you eat every meal here, and then you go to the gym, and then you play games, and you're here probably 12 hours a day. So I bet some of your friendships are here too, right? So our business life and our professional life, everything is starting to overlap in our new economy. So really important to think about how to have strong relationships with the people that we work with and the people that we're spending time with. And to be efficient, a lot of times we're going to have to do things that are overlapping. So I go hiking a lot with girlfriends that I'm still working on projects with because it's an efficient way for us to get things done. So after the funnel test, what I talk about in the book is looking at, do you have a support system that actually helps you achieve your goals and fulfill your passions? And if you don't, how can you fill it in? So of course, technology is a really important facet of this. I talk a lot about technology in the book, how it can be the accelerator. For example, I'm going to tell you one story about how communication has changed, and you probably have thousands of them here at Google that you could tell, but there's a military family that I spoke with. Vivian is the wife. She lives outside of DC, and her husband, Mike, has been deployed 6 times in the last 10 years. I said, well, how are you guys staying connected? Have you ever seen that game where you put a photo on a stick? You know what I'm talking about? Like Mike on a stick, her husband's got a little picture on a stick. She brings him around a little popsicle, right? So they've got 2 kids. The kids, everywhere they go, they bring their dad, his photo on a stick. They take pictures on their iPhone, and they constantly are sending messages back and forth. That has completely changed the way that they can create a sense of empathy, a sense of connection. And with technology, that wasn't here, 5 or 6 years ago. You couldn't take your instant digital photos. You couldn't send it over Facebook. So that kind of connection is changing the way we create connections. Now, because you're in tech, you've probably heard about this already. But there is research by a gentleman named Steven Pinker who has said that in the past we had about 10 connections that were really important to us. Maybe it would be our immediate family, maybe our neighbors. Now we're up to 150. So our circle of empathy and everything that we're doing has more ramifications across our network. Path, obviously you guys are familiar with Path. That's one of the reasons they have a limit of 150 because they want to try to keep the close connections. So knowing this, everything that you're doing, your actions, your behaviors are going to be amplified and leaving a digital footprint and impacting your network in the future. So again, this is another big shift that we didn't have in the past. I think about when I first got a job. it wasn't that long ago, but I do remember being at the library researching and sending out letters and making phone calls. There was not the ability to connect with people by LinkedIn or sending a very well-written email to get the job. Again, today things have completely shifted in terms of how we network, how we have jobs, and how we move through the world. So another thing that I've tried to point out in the book, which I think is really interesting, is that innovation has changed over the years and how we come to breakthrough thinking. There's two things that I want you to think about. The first one is that in the past, things like the light bulb, the car, a lot of innovation was based on single kind of thought processes, single innovations. And now true innovation comes from collaboration. It comes from co-creation. It comes from people coming together. So your ability to network and work in teams and to create these strong relationships is even that much more important than it was in the past. So I'm imagining here at Google, I know you guys have 20% time, I've read about that before, which sounds awesome. But I'm imagining that a lot of the great work is coming out of team-based learning, right? So that's another big shift that's happening. Another trend in networking, obviously, is content creation. But what I like to do is talk about it on a bigger level, where the idea is, or the question to ask yourself is, are you a producer or are you a consumer? Now, in our economy, we need both, right? We need people that are buying and selling. But if you are a producer, or at least thinking every day, what value am I bringing to the table? What value am I bringing to my relationships? Am I bringing ideas to the table? Am I bringing creativity to the table? Similar to connecting on your passions, if you're connecting around ideas and thoughts, products, all of those things, if there's something in between the relationship that's here, you're going to have stronger connections. So I talk a lot about how do you get into a producer mindset. A couple of things that are important with a producer mindset. Have any of you read Little Bets by Peter Sims? It's a really good book. I would recommend it. Little Bets, basically, the book, what it says is that true miracles and breakthroughs, usually when they happen, we don't know about it until it happens. It's little steps and little bets that we take to get us to the breakthrough, right? So think about that in terms of networking. There may be these relationships that are long-term relationships that are going to be very, very impactful for you, but you have to keep working across a series of steps, and it may be multiple years. So true innovation comes from little steps, little bets, collaboration, sharing your values across your network, and working together in collaboration. The creativity, that's a very, very important part of this process. Another thing that I talk a lot about is just how media manipulation has changed over the years. And again, because you guys are technology experts, you've probably thought a lot about this. But it is easier than ever to raise your profile around a specific topic or subject. So, for example, when I left Virgin America, I decided I wanted to blog, and it was very easy, right? You could set up your own blog, of course, but then I thought, well, I'm going to blog for Ad Age. That will position me as an expert in the marketing space. I'd like to blog for Huffington Post. Anyone can blog these days, and if you select the right blogs and you select the right content to put out there, it's going to help you accelerate your networking abilities. So every time I wrote a piece for Ad Age, probably would get retweeted about 500 times. I'd get more contacts asking me about marketing or startup gigs. It's a great way to accelerate your networking. So in the book, there's also lots of thoughts about accelerating, how to connect with more people, partnership strategy, that type of thing. Another thing that is core to my philosophy on networking, and it sounds like at Google you guys already have this, because Nathan was telling me about some great programs where you're doing educational programs to help others learn across the company, right? You have something like that, right?
Absolutely.
And there's a lot of volunteerism. So you guys are already focused on the we. This is critical because networking today, if you're more focused on giving and supporting others and focusing on the we instead of just the me, you're going to have a much more successful career path, much more successful networking. So for example, I spoke with George John. He's a CEO of Rocket Fuel. It's a media company that does programmatic buying. They've grown, not as fast as you guys, but they've grown to about 200 people in the last 4 years. And I said to him, tell me how it happened. Like, how did you get the growth? And he tracked every single connection back to his network. His partners were through his network. His employees, most of his employees were recruited through his network. His funding was through his network. Time and time again, he kept turning back, and it was through his network. In a lot of situations, these were people that he had helped over the years with other things. So what happens when you make an ask, when you've been helping someone, for 5 years, and then you come to them and you say, I'd like your help on X? It's much easier for them to say yes, right? So again, in the past, I do have a hypothesis that people would hoard their contacts more. It would be, I don't want to share this with you, I don't want to share that with you, and I want to make sure that I get ahead. And it was more of a climbing the ladder mentality. Now, the job market is more of a horizontal and a collaborative fashion. Today's intern might be tomorrow's CEO, right? Right?
Hopefully one day.
Hopefully one day. Well, maybe tomorrow, you never know. So the book talks a lot about the we. It talks about respecting people regardless of age, title, income, because the world is shifting. An example of that, Dennis Crowley, who is the CEO of Foursquare. I interviewed him in the book. I interviewed about 60 people. Dennis, he was actually, Dodgeball was acquired by Google at one point. Are you guys familiar with this story? Because I see you nodding a little bit, maybe?
I don't know where the story's going, but I know about Dodgeball.
Okay, all right. So Dodgeball was acquired by Google. Prior to that, Dennis was working with 3 different startups, and he lost his job. Oddly, when I met him, it was in Tahoe, and we were at a conference, and he said, didn't you used to work at Kirschenbaum and Bond, which is an ad agency? And I said, yeah. And he said, well, I was an intern there when you were the general manager. And I'm like, oh my God, and here he is, the CEO, right? It's like, what happened? I did something wrong. He's the CEO, and I'm, doing whatever. So he was an intern while I was a GM. He had these 3 jobs at the startups afterwards that he got fired. He started Dodgeball, gets acquired by Google, and then I don't know exactly what happened there, but it went flat, right? So they stopped. Probably should not be talking about Dodgeball, but it's too late. I'm already halfway in. So then, he ends up restarting it himself as Foursquare. And the pivot point that he went through, he describes as one of the most growth-filled periods in his life. And that he had all of this change that was happening that he wouldn't have done. So pivot points are also really important. Pivot points can come in the form of pink slips, job loss, recessions, right? Remember back in 2008, I don't know if it happened here at Google, but oh my God, half of my friends lost their jobs. And that's when major shift in terms of your networking, your experience and your abilities, all those things can really move forward in an exponential rate. So today's intern can be tomorrow's CEO, really, really important to think about. One thing that is happening here, and I think that it is more rampant in Silicon Valley, is that collaboration and sharing, I think, and you guys can agree or disagree, I think it's actually happening more here than it is across the globe. I talked to one VC who said that, software and tech when you are open about things and you start sharing, you get more feedback and then you have a better product. It's one idea about it. But so people are sharing more in this market. So you can be the leaders in this idea of networking and connecting and sharing and giving back. You can be the ones that are starting to have that trickle out and creating great positive change. One of the last sections of the book, and then what I'm hoping we'll do is do a quick Q&A, but the last section of the book is called Head, Heart, or Wallet. And obviously, head, heart, or wallet, we all need financial security. We need to be able to pay our bills. We need to be able to feel secure about that. But this section of the book really looks at how are you valuing your life? What are you looking at the end of the day in terms of what's making you happy? Is it the experiences that you had? Is it the relationships that you've had over the years? Again, time and time, the people that I interviewed, everybody from Dick, the CEO of Twitter, to Om Malik, to Britt Morin, everybody started talking about that. It wasn't necessarily the material goods, it's the accomplishments, it's the ideas, it's the legacy. So the book will bring you through this thinking where you're also thinking about, am I connecting based on what I'm trying to leave in terms of the world, leaving my imprint, and leaving as a legacy. So your network is your net worth. What I hope that you'll think about is that networking is more of a lifestyle and a process, and that if you focus on relationships rather than just looking at money and finances, that success, happiness, productivity, all of those things come from relationships. So I'm imagining that a lot of times, I've been in this place before too, where I think about, am I investing in the right company? Am I getting the deal? Am I getting the right job? Like, you get very focused on, am I getting this, and this, right? Am I getting the right stock options? Am I fully vested? Like, we start thinking a lot about all these things that are more financially based. If you focus on the relationships, keeping them strong, and you nurture the relationships, you help other people, my belief is that everything else falls in line and that you will have the success, the productivity, and the happiness. So in closing, just to tell you more about the book, I worked on it for 18 months. It was really amazing. There's about 70% of it is story-based. So it's interviews with lots of different people, both personal and professional stories. I interviewed a young woman who was battling leukemia, who talks about how connecting helped her through that. You've got the military moms, entrepreneurs. It also goes through a lot on how to make an ask and how the importance of storytelling in today's world is really important, and how people connect on emotions more than they do on facts and figures. Then there's about 30% of the book that is how-to and exercises. So for people that are more like me, who are more analytical and they want a roadmap, the exercises give you kind of a roadmap of how to chart things out. So with that, I want to thank you guys for being here. I see the book is on sale for $10, which is the cheapest I've ever seen it. So I'm going to buy all of them that you don't. But it's an honor to be here. I have such respect for Google. You guys were a great partner at Virgin America. We did amazing things with you, so I always will be grateful for that. And I'd love to open it up for questions.
Thanks for the talk.
Sure.
What I'd like to know is what triggered you to leave Virgin America and then decided to write a book?
Sure.
What's the journey about that?
Yeah. I loved Virgin America. I was there for 4 years. I'll be honest, I was fully vested and knew that I didn't want to be an airline person for the rest of my life. It's a great business. It's also a challenging one in terms of the economics. It's hard to describe what it's like to have outside influences that impact a business as much as airlines. The oil prices, swine flu, like everything you can imagine impacts travel. So at the end of the day, I just decided I didn't want to be an airline person forever. And I felt like 4 years was a good, healthy amount of time. But I'm still very close with them. A lot of the startups that I advise now, actually, I'm helping them do some partnerships with Virgin. But it was great. I met Sir Richard. Actually, there's one story I'll share with you guys that's really fun. It's about the power of the ask and like going for things and going for your dreams. So there were these kids, and I just did an event with them last week, but they're from an underserved area in LA. They made a video, they were up for a contest, and they made a video and they sent it to me, and it said, you know, Sir Richard, will you help us win this contest? They needed votes. And I had never asked him a favor because I just didn't feel like that was appropriate. I guess, you know, it'd be like asking some of the top people at Google to do a favor for you. You probably think about that twice, right? But the video was so compelling and the kids did such a great job that I sent it to him. And I said, I know you're busy, but if you could tweet for the kids or, you know, go on Ustream or do something for them, I would really appreciate it. So that was around 10 o'clock at night. The next day, about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, my phone rings. Porter, it's Richard. And I was like, oh my God, is this like a joke? I thought it was one of my friends, you know. And he said, I'm actually in LA right now. I'm at the Sunset Marquee. I have about a half an hour. If you want, you can bring those kids over and I'll meet with them. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe this. So I called the woman who's the mentor and I said, Nancy, get the biggest SUV you can because Sir Richard will take a meeting with the kids. Like, gather as many as you can. Now, these kids are from a low income area. The point of the story here is that if the kids would have ever asked anyone in their world if they could have scored a meeting with Sir Richard, what would the answer be? Never in a million years, right? They didn't know that they were 2 degrees of separation away from him because I knew the woman who was the mentor of the class. She gathers the kids up in an SUV. I think about 6 of them went to the meeting and they videotaped the meeting, so even though I wasn't there, I got to see it. And I have to be honest, like, it still brings tears to my eyes. But what's amazing about Sir Richard is, first of all, he's very down to earth. He is very present when he's at a meeting. He would be giving you eye contact. He would not be looking at his cell phone. He asks the kids, what do you value? What's holding you back from being entrepreneurs? What do you want to achieve in your life? And I can say with all confidence that those 45 minutes changed the lives of those kids, that they felt a respect and an empowerment that they probably had never had before. So that's the type of thing that can happen with connecting and the way interaction happens today that didn't in the past. You know, in the past, you wouldn't have the tweet that you could send to the president, you know, of a country or to a basketball player. We hear about it all the time, kids sending something and ending up, you know, with the NBA player playing ball. Technology has changed how we connect. So after that meeting with the kids with Sir Richard, what happened at their school? Well, people heard that Sir Richard was there, and so then Steve Schimmel, he was Googler number 13, he went to the school and presented to the kids. Then the CEO of a skincare company went. Then Rob Minkoff, who was the director of The Lion King, went. So it was, you know, the ripple effect that our actions in a network can have so many ramifications. So your actions, the kid who sends you the letter that says, can I talk on the phone? Can I have 5 minutes of your time? That 5 minutes can change somebody's life. So that's what the book is really about. It's about helping, it's about being authentic, it's about having connections that are really real. They're not based on just exchanging a business card and having an egg roll at some, you know, cocktail party. It's about ideas and sharing and doing things better for the future. So that's a very long answer to your short question of why I'm not at Virgin America anymore, but that's my favorite Virgin America story.
Can you tell us more about how you maintain your relationships, especially going from 10 relationships to 150, you know, and going from college to changing workplaces or meeting people on the plane, how do you sustain those actively?
Yeah. Well, the actively part is where you have to think about what are the core relationships that are the most important. But I do keep a database of all my relationships. And some people use Card Munch. I put everything in. And so I find value in that. Now I have a big email list, right? But what I would say is that there are ways that are more efficient. So now, like, I go to New York a lot. When I go to New York, I'll invite all of my New York friends, or 10 of them, like, hey, let's all meet for cocktails. Doing group activities can help. I also call it being positively productive, where I'll overlay personal and work things. So the hiking example and having a business meeting, I advise one company called Zozy, and they're all about experience, travel, and adventure. So whenever I meet with the Zozy guys, it's like, well, let's just go on a hike while we're talking. So looking at how to keep being efficient. The other thing that's really important is all of those time wasters that you have in your life. So I don't know how many emails you get a day, but think of all the ones that you could unsubscribe from, right? Those like hundreds of emails. So looking at all the inefficiencies and keeping your time as productive as possible is really important. The other thing is that I have made really good contacts through social media, just because I'm kind of in the social space. I have moved those from online to offline by having, Skype coffees, meeting them at a conference. Oh, are you going to be at South by Southwest? Let's meet up there. So, safety first, but looking at if it's an interesting relationship, how do you move it into an online or an offline one from online? So those are things to think about. In terms of job contacts, I got to tell you, the annual holiday card, a lot of people don't do it anymore. Like, that's an amazing way to stay in touch with people, and people really love it because you don't get mail that often. So little things like that, a written birthday card, all those little things, a thank you note, amazing, and it really stands out. So think about little things you can do like that. Also, when you meet people at events or meetings, another thing I like to do is, well, can I follow up and send you this article that I think you might find of interest, that kind of thing. So look for how to keep it sticky if you think it's a good relationship.
So I see a lot of parallels with Gary Vaynerchuk's whole, crush it and thank you economy. How would you apply some of the same principles if you're a scrappy marketing budget startup that he uses, and what you would say in building relationships and whatnot?
Yeah. I love Gary, by the way. We just did an event at the Apple Store in New York last week. So we are kind of in sync. I think that his personality versus mine is very different, right? He's in New Jersey, like a lot bolder, but I adore him. Some of the principles that I think work for startups, let me give you an example that's in the book. So Melody, who's the CEO of Style Seat, she used to be at Current TV, and she knew, like in her heart, that she wanted to have a startup. She knew that she had this idea. It was all about, it's like Open Table, except for hair salons. So that was her concept. She was fearful about how to do this, and what she did was she immersed herself in the tech world by going to about 2 conferences a day and constantly like getting in and socializing with people in the space. Ultimately, what happened was that once she had found a partner and an engineer, and she decided to have an A round of funding, she already had a network built up of people that she respected and trusted because she was setting her vision on that, right? So the people that funded her, they also are co-founders of Uber and all sorts of other things, but she had met them through personal relationships. So figuring out who are the people that you want to meet, how do you meet them in an authentic way? So when it's time to make the ask, the relationships are existing. It's always better to have the people in your network when you don't need them instead of when you need them. I'm a big fan of warm introductions too. I think cold calling is very hard these days, and so always look for the warm introduction. There are trends in hiring that more and more companies are using LinkedIn to hire. They're using internal referrals to hire. They're not going to like monster.com. They don't use the external recruiters as much. More and more is internal. So if you want, you probably all want to stay at Google because you're at like the best place to work. But hypothetically, your friend who wants to be at a different company, if you want to be at a company, like let's say you want to get to Virgin America, the fastest way is to network within that and figure out all the people that you know to get in there. So those are some of the things, like immerse yourself in the community, and it's easier to find people in the community now because we've got online profiles, we've got very specific conferences, and get smart, like read and research as much as you can about whatever vertical you're in.
I guess during the 18 months of writing your book, which one was your favorite interview and why? Your most interesting interview?
The most interesting interview. Most interesting interview. Well, there's a couple that come to mind. I'm a big baseball fan, so Larry Baer was really fun to interview, who's the CEO of the Giants. And his story is pretty exciting because he loved baseball when he was 10 years old, and all his life he wanted to work in baseball. And he shares a story about when he was in college. He called the owner of a baseball team in Chicago and was like, I want to do a radio show on your sports team, and close the deal. So then he started getting the background in baseball, and it's again another one of those stories that if you don't ask for it, you don't know if you're going to get it. So he was really fun to interview. Michael Mina, the chef, who I'm now good friends with, he was fun to interview too. And the reason his story moved me so much was that he was always passionate about food, but his parents are from Egypt. He was born in Cairo. And when he went to them and said, I'm going to be a chef, his dad was like, are you kidding? Like, you need to be a lawyer, a doctor, or engineer. And so he made a deal with his dad that he would go to college, but he still kept focusing on his passions. Ultimately, what happened after about 2 years into college, his dad realized that Michael's passion for food was not going away. And so his dad said, I've actually researched, and if you're going to do it, you need to do it right. You need to go to the Culinary Institute of America. It's on the East Coast. Let's see if we can get you in. So the dad came around, and the way Michael told that story, like I actually needed a tissue. Like it was so powerful that his dad came to a place, even though there was a cultural difference between what the father believed was a good career path for his son. But Michael networked, he proved himself, and he stayed true to his passions. And of course, now he has 18 restaurants. But he's another one, he's in the book because he worked, he flew on Virgin America all the time. And one of the things that I did there was I knew who our top 100 flyers were. And so I had sent everybody airplanes, those little model airplanes. So Michael received one of those airplanes, and I ran into him at an event, and I was like, hi, I'm Porter, I sent you that airplane. And he's like, oh my God, I love the airplane. And every time he would fly, he's got 2 boys, the airplane is in his boys' bedroom, and he'd say, Dad's going on Virgin America, I'm going to Vegas, and I'll be back. So this airplane became symbolic in their house, right? So Michael and I became very fast friends, and he's now in the book, and I also advise him. So again, that's relationship that I was saying thank you for flying us, and you never know where it's going to end up. And because of that, he's done charity events and different things that I've asked him to do. And I just had my book launch party at his restaurant. So you never know how a relationship's going to unfold.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on some of the tactics or your secret tips when you first meet someone, or for example, at networking events or conferences? What are some of the questions you would ask and kind of the technical level?
Yeah, that's a great question. So try to steer the topic to things that you are interested in and knowledgeable about. Another tip is that if you don't know the answer, or you don't know the topic, be honest. So my example with that was in the book I write about, I had a boyfriend in my 20s who was a journalist, and he was very smart, right? And he had this book club, and I remember thinking, I don't know all the authors are reading, and I was intimidated by that. But instead of being intimidated, now the right response would be, oh, I don't know about that author. Tell me more. Why are you interested? So again, if there's something that the conversation comes up and it's like, people talk about pop culture all the time, like, oh, well, I haven't seen that movie, why do you like it? Always try to probe with questions, and honesty is the best policy, and try to talk about stuff that you care about. The other thing is that I'm more for quality versus quantity. So if you're going to a conference, try to research who's there and think about who are the 3 people that I want to meet. Who are the 3 people that I want to focus in on? And set your sights on doing that, trying to just meet those 2 or 3 people.
So now that you've got this book written and you've probably got a little grace period, what's next?
What's next? Well, I'm going to apply it to Google so that I can come here and have lunch with you guys. What's next? Well, I advise about 7 companies right now, and so that's been really interesting to me. And then I've got the book. I do have another book that I've already written about 70 pages of, but it's a humorous memoir on dating and having a midlife crisis. So that's a completely different book. So if that one, I hope I get invited back if I get that one published, because that will be the stand-up comedian routine. And then I've been creating content with some friends, and so I'm creating a lot more content. I also do classes on Creative Live, if you guys have heard of that platform. It's an online educational platform, so I just did a 3-day course on building a brand from scratch. And I'm doing another one coming up on networking, but it's kind of in that space of online learning, so that's been really fun for me. So I'm trying to take what I've learned over the last 20 years and give it back as much as I can. I am lucky I still get CMO calls all the time, so if the book bombs, you'll see me back as a CMO somewhere.
I have a question about this producer versus consumer. For me, I'm basically a consumer. Even I think I have a lot to offer. I always kind of hold back for whatever. Do I want to share those? Maybe from the, to push myself towards the producer side. Can you offer some tips? Yeah.
That's not uncommon. A common theme of the 60 or so people that I interviewed, there are a lot of people who are introverts, and a good book to read about being an introvert, and I'm not saying that you are one, but Quiet is a really good book. It just came out, and that there's nothing wrong with being an introvert. What you have to do is find ways to feel comfortable about talking. So already, you and I chatted a little bit about your career, and you've been here 5 years, you're adding a lot of value to the area that you're in. I bet that you have a lot of inspiring information that many people would love to hear about. So what I would say is test it out in small bits, like, mentoring is a really great way to help people. Start sharing in a way that is comfortable to you, and you might be surprised. The example that I gave you of Victor Chang, he said that it's really shifted completely for him now that he's starting to share and connect with people. As human beings, we need people around us, and there's tons of research that, if we have good connections, we're going to be happier, we're going to be healthier, we're going to live longer. Another thing you might want to do is try finding a team. I love mastermind groups. I think that it can be a really, really positive thing where you get a group of maybe 5 or 6 people where you have shared goals and you meet once a month or once every 2 months. I do a mastermind group with a bunch of women, and it's really fun. It's all tech women. We eat dinner once a month, and it's been huge for me. I also am on a authors Facebook group that I am on all the time, and that's been really supportive. So look for the things that you can join that are going to give you some of that support too.
Thank you.
Yeah, I love mastermind groups. Well, if there is something that you want to ask or you think about later, you can email me, portergale@gmail.com, or we could do a Google Hangout. I have been doing Google Hangouts, or my Twitter handle is @portergale. But it's been an honor. I know that you guys are all really busy and that you have tons of stuff going on, so thank you for making the time. And Nathan, thank you for inviting me here today. All right. Thank you.